Welcome back to GUTV. I'm Kendra Andrews, and our first guest today is Jennifer Akins, a professor in the English Language Center, which works with students attending Gonzaga who are learning English as a second language. Thank you so much for joining us today. We're super happy to have you here. My first question for you is, what is the English Learning Center and what's its purpose?
So the English Language Center has an intensive English program, and we teach an academic program. Students are in class 21 hours a week, which seems like a lot, but it's intensive, and that's a long story. Anyway, so we take students who mostly have studied English in their home country, and we really work on the cultural expectations of attending a university, academic language, which is different really than language on the street. And then some of our students go on to Gonzaga as graduate students or undergrads. Some of them go back home because they were just here visiting exchange, kind of doing their study abroad. Some go to other universities where they have majors that they want. And we also have a new program which is called Global Bridge, and that's taking our highest level students who are accepted to Gonzaga and are planning to matriculate and earn degrees here, and allowing them to get more credit when they're in the English Language Center, and then also giving them a little bit more support, both linguistically and culturally, in their first year at Gonzaga. So we're really excited about that.
Yeah. And I assume that you have with everyone coming from different countries and having different levels of English, how do you go about helping them integrate with those different levels?
It's a good question. So students who are the most advanced, so our level 5 is kind of coincides with our Global Bridge one. And those students, we're trying to integrate them a lot more into freshman orientation if they're planning to stay here, and kind of open up all of the opportunities that regular Gonzaga students have with GSBA activities and Gonzaga Outdoors, etc. Students who are less proficient, who are in the levels, 1, 2, or 3, we do tend to have social and recreational activities for them, but they are less integrated with the rest of the population because it takes a lot of patience for a domestic student to have a long conversation. But we have things like global conversations where people come in and you can talk about countries, and they do presentations, and it's kind of a case by case.
Yeah, and how have you seen them adjust, all these different levels? Some don't speak English, so they can't be as integrated, but how have you seen the Gonzaga community be welcoming to these kids that can't necessarily communicate with them very well?
So for students who don't have the level of proficiency and aren't matriculated Gonzaga students, it's really the social welcome. And Gonzaga is, I would say, a very open-hearted place, full of really good intentions. And there are great services. There's orientation, we have an activities team, and the last couple of years the Center for Global Engagement has started this thing called Peer Ambassadors. So we have students who've returned from study abroad, and they sort of work on taking students to coffee hour, coffee house on Wednesday nights.
Yeah.
Sorry. And just kind of accompanying. Basically, it's sort of a theory of I'll come with you and you come with me and we'll be together in this. For more advanced students, I think the place where they feel, I actually asked some of them to do this, the place where they really feel the most welcome is when their professors or other people in their class or people that they meet ask them really sincerely about their perspective. And they feel like they really get to have a voice in creating the community, not just as a visitor, but as somebody who really has something to offer. And that's when they feel the most welcomed. Yeah.
And for the students that are also attending Gonzaga, not just part of this program, when it comes to their other courses, I mean, I can imagine that a class like philosophy could be extremely hard to understand when you can't speak the language. How have they been dealing with that, and what are the professors doing to kind of help them?
So philosophy is a good one. The new core, it's an extra credit. So just this fall, for the first time, we started a multilingual section, and it's part of this Global Bridge. And the idea is half of the spots in the course are saved for multilingual speakers, and these are students who have a really high proficiency level. So in the past, they would have just taken philosophy, deal with it, it's hard, but everybody has compensation skills. But this time around, they saved half the spots for international students, and then I think the domestic students who were in there took something on the freshman survey to say that they really were wanting to be in a class that was intentionally mixed. And the professor who's teaching it had volunteered and said she was interested. And it's part of a soft start to try to see if there are ways to really make a course much more multicultural and not so focused only on, I mean, they have to cover the canon, they have to cover Western philosophy, but to really talk about it from a lot of different perspectives.
And to broaden this topic about diversity on campus, we actually have Andrew Quinn, who's in the Tweet Suite, who has a question for you. So Andrew, what do you have?
Thanks, Kendra. We're here hanging out in the Opila Suite, and the topic of tonight's show was, is Gonzaga creating a welcoming, diverse environment? And so tonight we wanted to focus on diversity, and one of the diverse things that we can talk about is religion on campus. But first we take a look at the ethnicities that are on campus. As you can see here, there are currently 3,685 students who identify as Caucasian on campus. So there is a large majority of Caucasian students, but there are also 1,475 students who identify as coming from a minority background, and the largest of that is 536 students who identify as coming from a Hispanic background. So obviously there's a big difference between 3,386 and 536, but there is a good number of minority students here on campus. Now for our next slide, we'll look at religious affiliations on campus. As you can see, the large part here is Roman Catholic. We are a Roman Catholic Jesuit institution, but there are also Christians, non-denominational Christians, as well as Jewish students, Muslim students, Hindu students, Buddhist students, and other types of religions here on campus. In fact, there are 24 different religious affiliations here on campus. And as you can see from our next slide as well, we also have students here from over 35 different countries. So we have a broad range of students here on campus. They come from all over. Not everyone is Catholic, not everyone is Christian. They have their own set of beliefs, their own set of religious values that they follow. And so my question for Professor Akins is, with all of these different religious affiliations on campus, do you feel that those students who aren't Catholic, aren't Christian, do you feel that they are comfortable freely expressing and practicing their religion here on campus? And if so, why or why not?
So just to reiterate his question, with all these different students from different countries with so many different religions, how do you feel they feel about coming to a campus that is a Jesuit campus? How do you feel about practicing their own religions?
Yeah. In recent years, I would say the largest population we've had that's not Christian is the Muslim student population. And I think at first they might be a little nervous about it, but Gonzaga has had a mosque on campus for decades, actually. And it was moved, it's in the basement of Crosby now, when they redid the bottom of Crosby. So there's a place to pray. And I think actually coming to a campus that has a pretty open discussion going on about faith has made it easier for them because they can talk about it. And it's something that people have a curiosity about. I think a lot of schools, you just kind of don't talk about religion at all. And in some ways that can be more isolating. So that part of it, I feel like Gonzaga is actually welcoming. I don't know, it's hard to be inclusive when you're talking about different religions, but I don't, the Muslim students have really felt very welcome here when they're talking about religion. Yeah.
And with different religions, different backgrounds, with different countries, a lot of different cultural norms, I imagine. So how have they adjusted to some of our norms here?
Okay, sorry, I'm not.
No worries.
I think most of the time, international students, which I think is a different, they're coming with a really different perspective than domestic students who are diverse. Because there's a key, which is that they always know that they're going home again. So when they're faced with something that feels like it's really against their values or offensive, they have really good resources. They have places to go to talk to people about it. They have, the faculty of the English Language Center. staff and international student and scholar services. It takes me a while to say that, and the CGE. So I feel like they have a lot of places to talk things through. The hardest thing I think is when they don't have the American students to really talk about it with. And that just is part of the learning curve. And I think that actually comes back to Caleb's mission statement of wanting to add culturally into that sentence, because I think over and over again I hear, I love it when people ask me about my country, I love it when people ask me about my culture, what it's like to be a high schooler in my culture. And when that gets into the classroom and that really becomes part of the whole Gonzaga conversation, that's, I think, when it goes beyond just being welcoming and really being inclusive. And anything that gives students a voice, I think, is fabulous.
And do you think that there is anything that we can do on campus to be even more inclusive for these students that are traveling so far overseas?
Slow down, like not just speaking slow down, but I feel like Gonzaga, people there's so many leaders on campus, there's so many people who are so involved, and I think when people slow down and take a minute to pay attention to the people around them, the good heart comes through, and the empathy comes through. And so taking a minute to look at something from a different perspective. I just was talking to a student before the show about she'd been overseas in the summer, and she said, well, the one thing I don't get to be anymore is ignorant. And we were talking about that idea that once you know something, once you know somebody from another culture and you know another way of life and you know another perspective, you never get to go back to not knowing that. And I think that's what Gonzaga wants, and I think that's what international students want. And I think that mutual purpose is, everything's there for it to happen. But then it's up to individuals. They just have to take the time.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. That's all the time we have, but thank you so much.
Thank you.
And now we're going to go back to Cohen.
Here at Gonzaga, we talk about inclusion and diversity, and in many ways, Gonzaga is a diverse place. However, when it comes to racial diversity, Gonzaga is severely lacking. As a freshman, I was told that my class of 2019 was the most diverse class in Gonzaga history, but I was shocked to find that 75% of my class was Caucasian. As our Professor Garrity likes to say, most people here look like my cousin. And it's true. We don't have a diverse student body or faculty. Now, there are many different variables for why this is the case, but the fact is that we cannot talk about diversity here at GU as if we're exempt. And as a student, you've seen it in the dorms and in public, these microaggressions that can make people in small minorities feel unwelcome. Charles McCall, finishing up his final project for a broadcasting degree, wants to make everyone feel welcome. This is his spoken word poem, Unity and Diversity.
Gazing out upon this mortal scheme, wherein we live and love and laugh and dream, I ask, has our vision been tempered by the fruits of age, or embittered by the vice of rage? Has it blinded us to what we see, or has it driven us to dare our dreams? You and I, weakened by the fight for right, wearied by the endless sight of broken bodies haloed by the camera's light, are tired of our mother's tears, sharing the same screen as drag queens and pop kings, as though our reality were just another scripted scene. Battered by these crushing blows, we peer through tears that shroud our clouded eyes. Like boxers in a final rounds, we lash out with flailing fists at any shadow that dares to close. We count the cost in the absence of our lost, and so find comfort in the embrace of our tribe and of our race. But we are more than our color and our creed. We are more than the sum of our sorrow and our fury. We are citizens of a great country, denizens of a diverse community, the nature of which demands that we step outside of our safe spaces and our sheltered places and confront the travesty of these tragedies that rend our heart and soul. It is we who cast off the chains of bigotry when we ratified the 13th Amendment to our Constitution and explicitly abolished slavery as an American institution. Fast forward 200 years to the day the towers came down. It is we who held each other up even as our tears rained down. And when Katrina broke the levees and the world called us refugees, it is we who were the family that we turned to in the hour of our need. And now it is we who need to engage with those whose ignorance would do us wrong. We need to look beyond the status quo to see the humanity encompassed by these tragedies and the existence of the constructs that allow these travesties to be. In this age of safe places and trigger phrases where our politicians can be unspeakably corrupt if their speech is politically correct, where the death of a black man is breaking news but a soldier's death is mourned by few, we bear the responsibility for speaking to those ideals that hold true. No matter one's race, color, religion, creed, we are all one people united by word and deed.
Coming up after the break, we have an interview with Women's and Gender Studies professor Sarah Diaz, and an example of what some GU students are doing to promote diversity on campus. You're watching The Answer Show on GU TV.